Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The War Bride's Oath. Episode 14. The dragon that had climbed on the pile of rocks tilted its head just as the two young men jumped off. They both slid down the mountain of rocks easily, jumping when needed, making the ride down look like child's play. Once they got closer, it became obvious they were actually pretty tall and muscular as well. As they had stayed behind, both Giselle and Neptune watched the two young men come down, noticing their striking resemblance to Cecilia. "Ceci!" shouted the first of them, running to hug her. Even the tall Cecilia suddenly looked petite in his large, bulky arms. This man was tall, extremely muscular, and had his dark hair organized in rogue braids over his shoulders. He had a little scar covered with dark yellow scales on his cheek and many more on his body. He had a youthful look to him, with his big, black eyes, his hairless, square chin, and that large smile stuck on his face. He made Cecilia spin in the air, hugging her like an excited child, but Cecilia was just as happy to see them. "How come you're here?" Cecilia asked the man behind him. "Well, when I came back from the north, as soon as I heard Dad had agreed for you to come here, I decided to come and check up on my little sister and cousin. I just happened to fly over some mountain she was still busy on. Come on, let her go for a section." He tapped his brother's shoulder until Darson finally put his sister down and stepped aside, letting Cashin hug her next. Their hug was very different from the excited one with Darson. He smiled at her, gently kissed the top of her head, and embraced her fully in his arms, gently but firmly. They didn't move, just hugging each other in silence for a few seconds. Although they looked a lot alike, the brothers were completely different. Cashin was actually a bit thinner and a couple of inches shorter than Darson, and his hair was cut short, except for a couple of braids on his neck. He also wore a simple leather ensemble, while Darson had half of his armor on, and an extra fur coat too. Next to them, Darson turned to Tessandra. "What came over you?" he exclaimed. "Coming here? With Ceci? What the heck? Hey, Ceci had boyfriend issues to settle. I just tagged along for her security." "What security? You both look like you got into a mud fight with a dragon and lost." "Wait a minute. Is that my sword?" "Hey, that is my sword. What did you do with it?" "It was all pretty and sharpened. What did you do to my precious beauty?" "And where?" "By the dragon's balls, Tessandra. Where is the other one?" "Sorry," she shrugged, "I lost it. This one's fine, though. Just needs a bit of cleaning." "Lost it? How could you lose it? It was my favorite." While Tessandra and Darson were bickering, Cecilia and Cashin finally parted, looking at each other with the same smile. Just then, the silver-scaled dragon growled loudly on top of the rocks and jumped down as well. Its long body made every movement look very elegant, and its small wings flapped so it barely even touched the rocks at all. When it landed, it began to growl loudly, curling its body in circles around Cecilia. "Kian!" she exclaimed, hugging the large snout. "I missed you too. By the way." Darson cleared his throat, looking a bit embarrassed. "I hope there was no friend of yours out there?" "Because they were not welcoming," so I had to have a little bit of a fists first kind of chat with them. Nope, sighed Tessandra, pretty much everyone wants to kill us at the moment. Darson grimaced, turning back to Cecilia. It's that bad? She nodded, and glanced toward Ashen's body, lying by the lake. Cashin followed her glance, and when he recognized the young man, he sighed. Oh! I'm glad you're here, muttered Cecilia. Don't worry, said Cashin, caressing her hair. It's going to be all right. Darson, help me move that guy. The two of them walked directly toward Ashen's body, carefully lifting him up. They had glanced toward Giselle and Nana, but without Cecilia or Tessandra to make the introductions, they only nodded briefly and kept moving to focus on Ashen. As soon as they looked away from her, Neptune almost ran to Cecilia's side. Those are your big brothers? They really look so much like you. They are so tall too. And this new dragon. It's such a pretty one. His name is Kian, said Cecilia, patting the silver-scaled dragon. He's bigger than Sir Dragon, isn't he? Or is it just that its body is longer? He's larger, said Giselle, who had approached cautiously, her eyes on the silver dragon, but it's a water dragon. So his body is longer than it is large. She looked like she couldn't help but stare at the dragon, with a hint of sadness in her eyes. Cecilia suddenly realized Kian was probably around the size Jin should have been if its owner had not died. She still had very mixed feelings toward that woman, but, bit by bit, she felt like she was starting to unveil those layers Giselle had hidden within. Soon enough, her brothers returned. They were using Darson's fur coat as a stretcher. Cecilia's heart tightened as she saw Ashen, lying there in a poor state. Let's get you out of here, muttered Cashin. Quickly, he and Darson secured Ashen on Kian's back, and Cecilia and Tessandra helped Nana climb on top. You getting on or what? Tessandra asked Giselle. I'll be fine, she grunted. Fine. Your call. I ain't nice enough to offer twice. Darson and Cashin exchanged a look, probably intrigued by the situation, but nobody said a thing. Instead, Kian suddenly grabbed Giselle between its claws, making the woman scream in fright, and jumped in the air. It was a quick, but thrilling little trip to the outside world. Nana, who was just starting to get used to this, had to hold on because of all the loops her stomach made in a quick time span. Kian landed easily, less than a minute later, on the cave's beach. It was still raining quite a bit, and the sand was drenched and all muddy, but it was nothing like the downpour earlier. Giselle squirmed out of the dragon's clutch, looking a complete mess, and took several steps back, as if scared by the creature. I said I was fine. You're welcome, grunted Cashin, giving her a disdainful look. On the beach, Darson had indeed reduced the numbers of their enemies by a significant amount. Some men were still lying in their own blood, most alive but clearly in no state to fight. They even retreated, crawling as far away as they could from Kian and the passengers on its back. On one side of the cave's opening, though, Jin the red dragon suddenly came out, limping, with an injured front paw. Giselle immediately went to her dragon, patting its snout in a comforting manner. Kian growled after the other dragon, and Jin did the same, each dragon warning one another. Under the moonlight, Qian's shiny silver scales were even more impressive, and the dragon's body seemed a bit bigger as well. Jin kept growling, but also retreated, staying close to Jisal. She didn't say anything, standing by her dragon with a sullen expression. "Where are we going?" asked Cashin, his eyes glaring at that woman. "We need to get him healed as soon as possible," muttered Cecilia. "To the docks," said Neptune. "I'm sure we can find someone from my family to help us." "Anywhere close will be fine," nodded Cecilia. "All right. Hold on." Without another look at the beach, Qian got into the water, floating happily as if the dragon was in its element. The sea was calm despite the rain, and the dragon's silver scales shined from the faintest streaks of moonlight. Its body was undulating, remaining close to the seashore, but behind the line of houses, and unless someone was standing at the edge or on a higher viewpoint, no one would spot them. The trip to the docks was fairly short, but on the way there, what they saw of the capital shocked them. Cashin even urged Qian to slow down and remain where the dragon would be mostly hidden. There was a lot of movement in the streets, too much for the late hour and in such bad weather. They could see men running with torches and swords, people shouting, sounds of swords clashing. "What's going on?" muttered Nana, worried. They listened for a few more seconds, but the more they did, the clearer and more depressing the situation was. "It sounds like the Yekara are taking control of the city," grunted Tessandra. "I suggest we lay low for now." "What?" exclaimed Nana. "What about my family? The tribe? And everyone?" "Let's just go quietly," said Cecilia, exchanging a glance with her brother. Cashin nodded, and sure enough, Qian quietly let them off between two boats on the dock, but even there, the situation was tense. They could see the Yekara going from door to door, loudly banging on them and forcing the owners to open, arguing with people. "Well, sounds like they are searching for someone," Darson said, tilting his head. 4 annoyed pairs of eyes on him made him grimace. "Oh. Sorry. Got it. I think we can get home," muttered Neptune, glancing around. "It might not be safe for your family, Nana," Tessandra warned her. "We don't know what the Yekara will do if they find us there." "Don't worry. My house is big and I'm sure we can hide." Before they could protest, Neptune went out first, tiptoeing to one of the large houses by the seashore. The docks were calm compared to the streets, but if anyone had looked up at the wrong moment from the street, they could easily be spotted. They put Ashen on Darson's back at the rear and quickly followed Nana to her house. There was a back door, and a porch under which they could finally get a bit of shelter from the rain, but before they even dared to knock, the loud voices coming from the inside had them all crouch down and hide. "You're acting like bandits," shouted a loud voice. "Who do you think you are, to barge in and claim to check the houses? What does that mean? You Yekara think you can do whatever you want? This is not an order from the king, and even if it was, this is my house and you will not be taking one step inside. Move aside, or we will force our way in. The man you call king committed treason and tried to run away instead of stepping down and negotiating with the rightful heir. Rightful heir, I'd rather eat all the rotten meat in the kingdom than believe what comes out of your mouths. I will only obey the one king I acknowledge, the White King. As if I would trust a Yekara. This is your last warning. Fine, a female voice shouted. Search if you want, we've got nothing to hide. But you'd better not steal a thing, and I swear you will get payback for this, you dogs. Next to them, Neptune looked on the verge of crying, with her little fists clenched. Tessandra put an arm around her shoulders and exchanged a glance with the siblings. Neptune's family was a no-go. They felt sorry for them, and they could hear the ruckus inside from the Yekara searching all over the place for them. Some of Neptune's younger siblings or cousins were crying, probably afraid. Quickly, they walked away from the house's rear porch, and went back out in the rain, to hide between the boats. I can't believe this, cried Nana. Those savages. I hope they eat rotten meat and die. I'm sorry, Nana, muttered Tessandra, but now we know we can't hide in the capital. They'll search all the clans we were allied with first, and I don't think they will stop until they get what they want. The outskirts, said Cecilia. We can try to go there, and it will be safer to reunite with Cray too. But we have to be quick. She was worried for Ashen. Darson was big and doing his best not to move him, and they had covered him with the fur coat, but his situation was already critical, and now they couldn't even find a safe and dry place to lay him. They all quickly got back on Kian's back, already drenched, and Cashin tapped his dragon's back. Wanna go find Daddy? The dragon emitted a little, high-pitched growl, suddenly speeding up against the stream. Soon enough, the bridge appeared far above them, seeming rather calm. When Kian used his wings to jump up and climb once on the pile, and then jump again to land on top of the bridge, Cecilia immediately realized why. The Yekara had closed the gates. Luckily, they had probably focused their forces inside the inner capital, and focused on no one entering, because there was no one to stop them when Cashin easily opened the heavy doors into the outer capital. As soon as they stepped foot there, Cray's large head appeared, and Kian jumped on the black dragon to play. Hey there, smiled Darson. Cray answered him with an angry growl, suddenly turning its red eyes on him. Darson jumped and immediately stepped back, cautious. If I were to bet, Tessandra whispered to him. I think Uncle is still upset with you. Not funny, Tessa. She chuckled, but they quickly walked past the pair of dragons to follow Cecilia and Neptune in the streets. There were still refugees from earlier, who raised their heads, curious to see them again, with the king lying on Darson's back. Thanks to that, though, the word quickly traveled to their allies still there. Bastet was the first to appear at one of the doors and quickly invited them inside. What's going on? Is that His Majesty? A lot of bad stuff, groaned Tessandra. The brothers quickly cleared a table to lay Ashen down, and his state was immediately revealed to Bastet, so shocked she put a hand to cover her mouth. Are the doctors of the Hashid tribe still here? Asked Cecilia. I believe they went back when they announced the doors were going to be closed. Lady Ishara thought something odd was happening, so she went to check. But they did leave plenty of medicine behind. Good. I will need it. I'll send someone to fetch it right away, nodded Bastet, immediately gesturing to one of the servants present, but, by the gods, what happened? Actually, you can tell us that while we heal him, added Cashin, walking to the other side of the table Ashen was lying on. I think I have a lot to catch up on. However, Nana suddenly stood up, still looking upset. I think I should go and warn my uncle. She left without adding a word, and a heavy silence followed her departure. It was as if now that they had finally found a place to stop, all the tension was getting even heavier. Seeing even the usually cheerful Nana so upset was depressing too. Tessandra sighed, and sat down in one corner of the room, exhausted. Darson decided to stand by the door, glancing through the window from time to time with his arms crossed. Lady Bastat's servant quickly came back, arms full of medicine and as many medical tools as they could find. Once the water was hot and both she and Cashin had washed their hands, with her brother's help, she immediately began providing the best help she could to Ashen. His state was terrible, but while his chances of survival were low, they weren't nil, and she had to focus on that. Cecilia began to explain the whole situation to both her brothers and Bastat, everyone else listening in complete silence. She spoke with a monotone voice, not raising her eyes once, as if speaking helped her remain focused and calm. For a long while, only her voice filled the room, with the rain quietly pouring in the background. Naptuni didn't return, but a younger cousin of hers did come to deliver some food for everyone, and say she had fallen asleep at her uncle's. When Cecilia was done explaining, they were still doing their best to save Ashen. She had her arms soiled with his blood up to her elbows, but she was confident he'd make it. It was already impressive that he was still alive and breathing, and she was prouder than ever of him. Those wretched Yekaras, groaned Bastat. They will definitely pay for this. I won't recognize a king that is no better than the tyrant. I'm so sorry about your father, Lady Bastat. Do not be. She shook her head. He met an honorable end. Our tribe believes death is the opening of a new life, in which our actions in the previous will help the gods decide our next destiny. I will mourn him later, but first, I need to be sure his spirit can be avenged. This fake king will not be recognized by my tribe. I doubt they will be going by the popular vote, scoffed Tessandra. They wanted to end him and use force against all the other tribes to comply. The Pangaha probably already fell, and they corrupted enough royal guards too. Her voice broke with those last words. Cecilia felt sorry for her cousin. Even if they kept hoping Sabale had survived the fight in the cave, not knowing about his whereabouts was too hard. They won't be able to take the city if all the tribes resist, insisted Bastat, and I know most will. No one is foolish enough to believe in a king supported by the Yekara clan, of all people. But what can we do, muttered Cecilia. Ashen's heavily injured, and we can't keep him hidden here for long. Once they realize he's not in the inner capital, they will come for him here. Unless someone can offer you all a safe place. They turned their heads to see who had spoken. That person had arrived from the door behind Bastat, completely silent. Everyone became on edge, Tessandra even putting a hand on her sword, but before she could draw it, the stranger started to remove their hood. Cecilia immediately recognized the woman. It was the one who had stared at her while she helped with the flood earlier, with the peculiar dot and lines tattooed on her face. "Greetings, Princess," she said with a polite smile. "You," muttered Bastat, staring at her tattoos. "You're from the Cheshi clan." The woman nodded, as she slowly removed the rest of her hood, revealing tattoos that went all the way around her completely shaved head. "My name is Aglithia. I am the third daughter of the Cheshi clan leader." Cecilia and Tessandra immediately exchanged a shocked look. The Cheshi clan had been surprisingly quiet, if not invisible, ever since they had arrived in this kingdom. From what Yasum had told them, they were considered the wisest clan, but they had also completely removed themselves from the political circle ever since Ashen had suddenly gotten rid of the violent Kunu tribe, which gave mixed signals about their intentions. "What do you want?" asked Cecilia, a bit doubtful. "This is our first time interacting with one of your people. I don't understand why you would help us now." "Well, it seems to me like you need it, for starters. Plus, just because we haven't been interacting with you or His Majesty doesn't mean we haven't been watching. In fact, we have been watching for a while now, and the arrival of your party did seem to stir a few interesting changes in the kingdom." "You mean like the Yekara taking over the whole city while your king is bleeding to death?" scoffed Tessandra. "Yeah, sounds like a ton of fun for you guys to show up now." "We suspected what the Yekara had planned," nodded Aglithia. "We only chose to get involved at the right moment, and when we knew there would be a side we could fully support." "You watched my sister because of her relationship with the king," said Cashin. The woman nodded. "Exactly. Not only with His Majesty but with the family leaders, as well," she explained, glancing at Bastat. "Until recently, my clan had major doubts in King Ashen's abilities as a leader. His relationships with the tribes weren't good, and he had distanced himself from the people. Much to our surprise, Princess Cecilia's arrival changed a lot of things and had us reconsider our position." "Great," retorted Tessandra. "So if things went sour, you were just going to hide and watch this kingdom fall into the hands of brutes? It wouldn't have been the first time." Cecilia realized all the current tribes and clans were those who had survived Ashen's father's tyranny. Either by making themselves small, or making and breaking alliances at the right time. Some like the Dorosafe, who were essential to the survival of the people, couldn't just disappear so easily, but scholars like the Cheshi were rumored to be, would have been the ones most at risk. For their clan to have survived until now, unthreatened and unbothered, was truly surprising. The woman named Aglithia took a couple of steps forward, her eyes on the king lying on the table. Cashin reacted to her approach, a hand on his sword, but everybody remained silent. This woman didn't look like a scholar. There was an aura around her, something that fighters could recognize. They could only see her face and neck, but they could guess her strong shoulders and fit body under her cloak. She turned her eyes to Cecilia again. "My clan is older than this kingdom itself, and we have rarely involved ourselves in politics unless the situation called for it. Which king rules is not our concern, unless it causes issues for the people. Hence, we spoke against the tyrant and allowed his son to take over. Now, we aren't fond of the Yekara clan and their ambitions, but we were going to wait and see if King Ashen turned out to be a better ruler than what we had observed so far. That is, until the princess appeared by his side. As I said, we have been watching you since you arrived." "Spying, you mean?" groaned Tessandra. "Yes. Among other things." Aglithia glanced over her shoulder and, to their surprise, none other than Nupia stepped forward, bowing. "You little. The triplets are at my family's service." We had put them inside the castle to work for His Majesty and evaluate him, but when you arrived, we changed our plans and made sure they would watch you instead, Princess. As it turns out, you are a fine heiress to the long line of dragon masters. This time, Cecilia exchanged a glance with Cashin. The way that woman said that was as if she knew as much about their dragons and their family as they did. What do you know about our family? Asked Cashin. About the dragon owners? Or dragon masters? I know a lot. I know more about your ancestors, though. The first dragon masters. Oh, don't be so surprised. I told you my clan was old, very old. We were around even before this continent was split into two nations. Once again, Tessandra and the siblings were baffled. Even Bastet looked completely at a loss. There was a time the Dragon Empire and the Eastern Kingdom were united as one? They had never heard of such a thing, at least, not as a historical fact. There were a few legends they had heard, bits here and there, and what one could imagine from the past, but neither country had been very diligent in keeping records. Even the Dragon Empire's centuries-old palace had limited archives and no mention of such a thing. Facing them, the Cheshi woman smiled again, nodding briefly. I suppose you'd be surprised to hear such a thing. However, I cannot tell you too much. There are secrets I cannot reveal that belong to my family only. At least, not yet. I did come here to extend an invitation, though. On my clan's behalf. The Cheshi clan wants to meet the Dragon Princess, and perhaps, establish an alliance. We don't have much of a military force, but we do have a few secrets that might be of help to you if you decide to go against the Yekara clan. If, repeated Cecilia. Well, you could also decide to leave and go back to the Empire. I won't be abandoning Ashen. I didn't expect that either. After all, you could both very well leave this kingdom to the Yekara clan. It is really up to you, to fight this war or not. Cecilia hesitated. She had even forgotten about such a possibility. She had only been here for several days, yet she hadn't even considered going back to the Empire at all. She surprised herself. Most likely, it was because of Ashen. Cecilia knew she was free to come and go, but Ashen had responsibilities as king. Plus, she knew his character enough to guess he'd hate to have to flee to her country, especially if it was because of someone taking his position and ruling over his people. He would never concede victory to that adopted brother of his, let alone the Yekara. She had seen how he truly valued this place and its inhabitants. She slowly shook her head. We are not leaving, she declared. Glad to hear that, smiled Aglythia. Then, the invitation stands. You're welcome to come and meet our clan leader tomorrow at dawn. How? Frowned Tessandra. The whole city will be blocked by the Yekara. Don't worry. I will come and get you. Well, that didn't answer the question at all. Aglythia gave them a quick nod, and before anyone could inquire any further, she turned around to leave, Nupia following after her. The room remained silent for a few seconds after she had left, everyone slowly soaking the information in. I can't believe even the Cheshi are going to get involved, Bastet finally said. It has been weeks since I even saw one of their people. They stay so holed up in that fortress of theirs, no one would notice if they really remained quiet all along. What are you going to do, Lady Cecilia? Would you trust them? Honestly? Yes. The Cheshi are exceptionally wise. It isn't just a rumor. They have intervened many times before, to help with natural disasters or solve trade issues. They even created the current money we use, and their ancestors came up with half the city's architectural plans. Some say all kings validated by the Cheshi are meant to rule until their death. They were also the first ones to doubt King Ashtaran's rule, and many say there would have been a lot more deaths if the Cheshi hadn't intervened to prove some people's innocence or invalidate the crimes they were arrested for. They even spent a lot of money to free some people who were imprisoned for not paying their taxes. Sounds like good folk to me, shrugged Darson. We'll see about that in the morning, declared Cashin. Cecilia nodded, her eyes going back to Ashen. She and her brother had done all they could. The table was covered in blood and had turned into a surgery ward for a short while, but at least, they had stopped the bleeding and managed to reduce his fever. Although they had stitched him up back and front, now it would all be up to Ashen to survive the night. She was tired, but she didn't think she'd be able to sleep a wink until she was absolutely sure he was fine, awake, and out of danger. Do you know if there are more of those beignet things, wherever they came from? Asked Darson. Those were really good, and I'm starving. We literally skipped dinner to fly here. I can send someone to ask, nodded Bastet with a smile. You can all stay here comfortably. I have 2 rooms ready for you upstairs if you need them, and plenty of blankets as well. We probably shouldn't move while the Yekara search the city for us, groaned Tessandra. I'm worried about the people in the inner capital, muttered Cecilia. Don't worry. Bastet smiled at her. The Eastern Kingdom people are more resilient than you think. No one wants another tyrant to rule again. We can fight back in small ways, even for the most unarmed of us. Just focus on His Majesty and yourself for now. For tonight, at least. What? Just grilling them is a no-go then? We can't fry the whole city, Darson. Tessandra rolled her eyes. Then what the heck do we have dragons for? Oh, shut it, groaned Tessa, getting up. Come on, let's just get your beignet. I want to check if we can get some information from outside too. All right. Oh, by the way, can you introduce me to that girl from earlier? No way. You stay out of that red-haired vixen's way. Red-haired? No, the other one. Wait, you mean Nana? They kept arguing while leaving the room, and Bastet left after them. Now that she was alone with Cashin, Cecilia sighed and stepped away from the table to wash her hands. Her brother did the same next to her. For a while, neither of them said anything as they went to sit on the little bench Tessandra and Darson were on earlier, opposite Ashen. They naturally sat very close to each other, and Cecilia let her head rest on her brother's shoulder. Cashin smiled and put an arm around her shoulders. So, you've been busy, hey? Yet, this kingdom really has a lot going on. You know, for someone whose lover was almost killed and had to flee after a fight, you seem happy. Cecilia suddenly lifted her head off his shoulder, staring at her brother with a shocked expression. Happy? She repeated. Cashin nodded. Yet, I was surprised. I don't think I've seen you like this in a while. Not since Cease left your side. Do you even hear yourself? You barely stutter anymore, Ceci. The last time we saw each other, you barely spoke at all, and never so clearly either. The only way to hear your voice was for you to read something. Now, not only do you barely stutter, but you speak a lot to others. It sounds like you made a good handful of friends and allies too. Cecilia was shocked. Was that really the conclusion her brother had come to, in such a short time? She tried to replay that evening in her head. She had indeed changed. Before, she wouldn't have gotten involved in any fight. She wouldn't have confidently spoken to someone like she did to Giselle and Bastet. She was always one of the shyest among her siblings, and losing Cease had made that worse. She took a deep breath. There has been some good, and bad things. Like what? I fought someone today. One-on-one. Cecilia nodded. I lost control again. I almost killed her. But you stopped. No. Ashen was the one who stopped me. I panicked. I'm still so scared to fight and kill someone I didn't mean to. Ceci. With what I've heard and seen, it was probably a real enemy, not a training partner. But what if it's really not someone I want to kill, next time? Cashin, I can't fight until I can trust myself again. You don't trust yourself because you think you need Cease. It's not true. Dragons are a reflection of our inner selves. Losing Cease might have been hard, but it doesn't mean you're as broken inside as you think you are, Ceci. But Uncle said people without their dragons go mad. Cashin sighed, shaking his head. Uncle Ophius said that years ago, and he probably didn't mean they became crazy. More like they went mad from sadness, I think. Even Grandma told you that was wrong. Just ignore what he said, Ceci. You're not going to go crazy. Plus, you heard what Mom said, there's a chance she'll come back, so think about it this way, if that helps you. Cecilia frowned and lowered her head. You know. Sometimes, I'm. What? No. It's nothing. Cashin waited, hoping she'd change her mind and open herself up, but it didn't happen. He sighed and pulled her to rest on his shoulder again. When she refused to speak, his sister was harder to open than a dragon's maw. Cashin was the closest to her among their siblings, yet he knew nothing but time would be able to have Cecilia speak. He looked forward again, at Ashen lying on the table. After hearing from Nebera that their parents had let Cecilia come here, he had been completely stunned, and even mad at them. They all knew how unstable the situation was in the neighboring kingdom. Even if they had sent her with a dragon, he was surprised they had agreed to this at all. Yet, their father had said Cecilia needed this. That sentence had been an enigma until now. He had thought all along that her heart had been closed by Ceci's loss, the key dropped in the imperial palace's lake, but perhaps, he had been wrong. Perhaps it could actually be healed here, with one man's help. For him as an older brother, it was a bit frustrating, but he was glad he had come to support her. It will be all right, he said, patting her head. Yab! The cavalry has arrived, exclaimed Darson with a huge smile, his arms full of beignets. We got you some, sighed Tessandra, handing them a plate each, and some information too. The Yekara have seized control of the inner capital, and not calmly either. A lot of people are getting arrested for protesting. They are talking about making some public executions in the morning. They want to execute them, exclaimed Cecilia. All of those people. Those who protested, at least. I think they want to make an example of them, to dissuade people from resisting. That's what I'd do too, nodded Darson, his mouth full. Intimidation strategy is rather efficient among military tactics. Especially if there are no fighters to resist. People don't like having their... Oh. Sorry. After getting glares from 3 pairs of eyes, he grimaced and went to sit in a corner with a sorry expression. Meanwhile, Cashin shook his head and turned back to Tessandra. If I understand right, we don't really have any other fighters we can rely on. Not necessarily. The Pangaha clan was the only other one with an official position as fighters, if they survived. There are the non-corrupt royal guards too, and probably a few mercenaries here and there. There were a lot of mercenaries outside of the capital, said Cecilia. Yet. Bad people, Ceci, remember. Not necessarily. They didn't become mercenaries by choice. They are still probably not fond of the king who kicked their butts out of his capital, Cecilia. I wouldn't count on them too much. However, Cecilia was still frowning, thinking deeply about this. Cashin smirked. There's that Cheshi clan we need to check out too. Am I the only one who noticed they probably don't just handle books? We noticed too. That girl she revealed as a spy? She's a sister among triplets, and all 3 of them are trained fighters, at the very least. I would say, assassins. That makes sense, nodded Cashin, and explains how their clan really survived so long. No one really makes it through centuries in an unstable nation with just books. They all remain silent for a long time, then, a faint smile appeared on Tessandra's lips. It seems like the Yekara haven't won yet, after all. So, do we get to kick or not? Darson asked, his mouth half full. Probably, said Cashin with a smile. For now, though, we should get some sleep. Especially you two. Let's make sure you treat your injuries before sleeping, I don't want you to catch a fever overnight. You sure are your mom's son, chuckled Tessandra. Don't worry, Mommy, we can take care of ourselves, we survived just over a week before you had to come and save us. Come on, Ceci, let's go upstairs. I really need some sleep. However, as she stood up, Cecilia's eyes were still on Ashen. Cashin came behind her and gently pushed her to go with Tessandra. Go sleep, Ceci. Darson and I will watch him. We will? Asked his brother, raising an eyebrow. I'm still not fond of the guy, for the record. If you do anything to him, you're dead, Darson, groaned Tessandra, pulling Cecilia's hand to leave the room. Fine. Hey, so you're introducing me to Nana tomorrow, right? Right. Hey. It's Neptune to you. Don't you dare think you'll get a love life before I get my boyfriend back. Despite how worried they both were for their partners, Cecilia and Tessandra fell asleep almost as soon as their bodies hit the bed. The day had been absolutely exhausting for both of them, and although their minds couldn't quiet down, they needed the rest. Lady Bastet had prepared a room with a comfortable bed for them too, so despite the noise outside and their injuries, they managed to sleep through the night. When Cecilia woke up and opened her eyes, the sound and smell of the rain came to her first. The room was still dark, but from the noises outside, she could tell the day was slowly starting. She sat up, worried she would miss the time that Cheshi had given her, and glanced around. Tessandra was still sound asleep on her side of the bed, but someone had brought fresh clothes for the two of them and put them on the little table against the wall. There was also everything necessary for a quick body wash, with a basin of water, soap, and towels. Cecilia sighed and got up to quickly clean herself. She checked her injuries, but most damage was internal. She could tell her muscles were sore from the brutal sword fighting and swimming. She was a bit mad at herself. If she had kept training regularly, at the very least, she might have been in better shape than this. She quickly got ready, glad to be able to refresh herself a little and get into some clean clothes. The simple but thicker dark brown dress Bastet had found for her was both comfortable yet pretty, off the shoulder with a flowy skirt. It was definitely a good fit and a nice change. She had gone straight to sleep in her dirty clothes from the previous day, whatever was left of them. At least Tessandra had undressed and slept pretty. Cecilia decided to let her cousin catch a few extra minutes of sleep and went downstairs, dying to check on Ashen's state. As soon as she thought about how she had left him the previous day, she couldn't help but be worried. She knew Cashin wouldn't have let anything happen to him and wouldn't have left his side if he promised to look after him, but she just had to check for herself. "When did you arrive?" a voice groaned. She stopped, a couple of steps away from the door, recognizing Ashen's voice and a chuckle from Cashin. "Last night. Just in time to save our younger sister, who was also trying to save you." "I see. You're welcome, by the way," grunted Darson. "I don't remember inviting you here." "We invited ourselves," retorted Cashin. "From what I understand, Cecilia and Tessandra weren't here by your invitation, either. Yet, they still got into a life-threatening situation because of you." "Again?" Ashen went silent, probably angry. Cecilia sighed. She hadn't expected the relationship between her brothers and him to suddenly be all good, but there was a time when they did get along. She had hoped this would help a bit. Right now, though, they only sounded angry at each other. "Where is Cecilia?" Ashen asked, suddenly sounding nervous. "Upstairs. She deserved some rest after everything she went through because of you. I did not ask her to come here, I did not ask her to get in the middle of our political affairs, and I did not ask her to put herself in danger because of me. She chose to stay and she chose to stay by my side. If you're not happy with that, there you go again. Blaming everyone who's putting their lives on the line for you." "You." "Cashin," said Cecilia, stepping forward. "Stop it, please." Her brother was leaning against the window, arms crossed and looking just like she had left him the night before. Ashen had managed to sit up on the table, holding his waist injury with his hand, while Darson was seated on the other side of the room, in a chair, busy drinking from a large mug. "Ceci," muttered Cashin. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she said, her eyes on Ashen. She walked up to him, checking on his state. Ashen immediately grabbed her hand, looking her up and down too, his expression getting darker for each scratch he spotted on her body. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "I'm fine. How about you? Does it hurt a lot?" "I'm fine." He shook his head. "Hey, hey, hey!" exclaimed Darson. "Why are you holding hands? Stop holding hands with my sister." "Beat it, Darson, she's a grown-up," yawned Tessandra, stepping into the room. She had also changed outfits, although her hair was an utter mess. "I don't care if she's a grown-up, she's my little sister. That guy can't touch her like that. I said let go." Tessandra rolled her eyes and walked over to grab a piece of fruit from the little plate that had been left there, most likely for them. From the smell and greasy stains, there also used to be beignet, but Darson had obviously only left crumbs behind him. "How late is it?" Cecilia asked, a bit worried. Now that she was downstairs, she could tell the darkness outside was mostly caused by the terrible weather, the sky very dark once again. The rain was much lighter, though, just quiet drops hitting the cobblestones in a pretty melody. "Not that late," said Darson. "Sunrise just began, it was still completely dark only minutes ago. I was about to come upstairs to get you but he woke up first." His green eyes exchanged a glare with Ashen, and Cecilia sighed. "He watched over you all night," she said to him, a bit annoyed. "Sorry," muttered Ashen, looking away first. Despite that, a heavy silence came over the room. Neither Ashen nor Cecilia's brother were happy about the other's presence, and for a while, Tessandra eating her apple was the only sound in the room. Cecilia insisted on checking Ashen's injury quickly before they planned to leave, but that was done in complete silence too. "Good morning." Nana's voice arrived like a bright ray of sunshine in the room. Immediately, Darson jumped to his feet and threw his mug into the fireplace, the alcohol provoking an impressive reaction from the fire. The arm of the leather chair nearby caught on fire, and Darson leapt to extinguish it with his hand, nervously patting the leather until the flames disappeared under his scaled hand. Then, he straightened himself, acting as if nothing had happened, and put on a large smile. "Hi, Nana. And here I thought I had embarrassed myself with Sab," muttered Tessandra. "Ah, good morning," answered Nana, blushing a bit. "I brought you guys more beignet before we go." "Oh, and some good news?" "I don't know if it's that good, but Sabale is alive." "Really?" exclaimed Tessandra, almost dropping her apple. "Are you sure, Nana?" Neptune nodded, putting down the tray full of freshly baked beignet. Immediately, the smell was more appealing than anything, and everyone moved to grab one, Cecilia handing one to Ashen who remained seated. She realized as soon as the warm filling and delicious fish hit her palate that she hadn't eaten in way too long and was hungry. Neptune's beignets were like heaven to everyone right now. "Yes," said Nana, fidgeting with her fingers. "Some of our fishermen and merchants were allowed by the Yekara to go outside today. They were heavily inspected, so I guess they are still searching for you, Your Majesty. But my cousin that was with them said some people definitely saw Sabale and my uncle being kept as prisoners. They have them exposed in public places, and they said they are going to, execute them. Do they know when? Asked Tessandra, grabbing a second beignet. No. Our family members and others tried to ask, but the Yekara people furiously refused to answer, and threatened to capture more people and hang them. But they said all the prisoners are heavily guarded. Do you think they will really kill them? No, said Cashin, it sounds more like they are trying to use them as bait to get you guys to appear. My cousin said the Yekara searched the inner capital the whole night, added Nana. It was a terrible ruckus. They barged into almost every house and even inspected our fishing boats. The citizens are very unhappy. A lot of people have been protesting too. My cousin said my uncles all refused to sell fish to any Yekara this morning. The whole capital will be rebelling, said Tessandra. None of the clans like the Yekara, and those who are allied with Ceci will sense something's off about them suddenly taking control. It's too bad they can't fight and only resist like this. She sighed and combed her hair back. She was probably glad to hear Sabale was alive, but likely twice as worried about his fate. Even if he had survived, he was likely not in a good state after fighting, and now, he could be killed any minute by the Yekara. They had surely noted he was close to the two cousins. Cecilia and Ashen exchanged a glance. The king looked sullen, his fingers almost carving his anger into the table's edge he was holding onto. It's much better than nothing, said Cashin. Any form of the people not agreeing to their terms will buy us time, and wear them out mentally. We need to speak to the Cheshi, declared Cecilia. I want to know how they can help us. I'm curious too, nodded her brother. The way they spoke about our family and dragons, sounds like there's more to it. Next to Cecilia, Ashen was about to get on his feet, but she gently pushed him. I'm not staying back, he groaned. You need to rest, Ashen. I don't want your wound to reopen. You barely survived it once. I don't think you can endure more blood loss. You had a fever for half of the night too, added Cashin. I'm not letting you go without me, he groaned. I'm going with my brother, she said. Stay here with Tessa, please. No. Wherever you're going, I'm going too. I'll be fine. I can endure a walk. Plus, you're going back inside the inner capital. I need to go back too, I can't stay hidden here while my people. You almost died. Cecilia protested, angry. You might pass out just from standing up. Stop protesting and stay here. I will have you chained to this table if I have to. I'll gladly help, chuckled Darson behind her. Ashen grimaced, but Cecilia was serious, and no one in the room had ever seen her so furious. She even had tears of frustration in her eyes. With a sigh, Cashin stepped forward, putting a hand on his younger sister's shoulder. Don't worry, I will stay back with Tessa, and watch over him. I don't need you, sighed Ashen. No, but I need to speak to you, said Cashin. There are a few things it is high time you know, and I have a few questions for you as well. Both Ashen and Cecilia exchanged a surprised look. What could there possibly be that Ashen missed that Cashin had to tell him? After what had happened the last time they saw each other. Cecilia glanced back at her other brother, but Darson also had a serious expression on, his lips pinched as if he had something unpleasant on his mind. Cashin. It's not something you need to hear, Ceci. You should get going. I'm coming too, exclaimed Neptune. I'm curious about the Cheshi clan. It's probably fine if I come along, right? Don't worry, I'm coming too, added Darson with a bright smile, completely misunderstanding her question. Nothing to fear. Tessandra rolled her eyes. Fine. I'll make sure those two don't kill each other while you're gone, Ceci. You should probably get going soon. I did not agree to this, groaned Ashen. No offense, Cashin, but I don't think there's anything to add to what happened back then. You and your father were pretty clear when you banished me. Ashen, muttered Cecilia, squeezing his hand. However, right now, he was still furious at her brother. Cecilia couldn't help but feel a bit choked up. To Ashen, Cashin was tightly linked to his memory of leaving the Dragon Empire, and that had come after. Even if he had heard Cecilia's side of the story, there was probably nothing that would relieve how he felt toward her father, who had deliberately sent him away. Yet, Cashin's expression wasn't that of someone who felt regret or even guilt, which made the tension between them even worse. No, he said. Father should have told him the truth back then, and he allowed me to tell him now. Cashin, what are you talking about? What truth? I'm slightly curious to hear too, muttered Tessandra. She glanced to the side, but Darson had gone back to that sour expression. Cashin looked at his sister, but it was clear she wouldn't leave before she heard this too. He sighed, uncrossing his arms. Father didn't want to send you away, Ashen. He only realized he had no choice. Why? When you came to the Onyx Castle, we would regularly find foreigners trying to cross our borders. They were coming for you, assassins paid to cut off your head and bring it back to the Eastern Kingdom. What? This time, all traces of anger were gone from Ashen's face. He was simply shocked, and so was Cecilia. She exchanged a look with her cousin, but Tessandra was dumbfounded as well. Only Darson knew the truth too. It wasn't that big of a problem, he scoffed. Most of them were weak, and we got rid of them before they got close. We were shocked by how it never stopped, though, continued Cashin. Father had already captured and interrogated some to find out what they wanted, so we knew they were after you and who had sent them. But they were still getting closer and closer to our family. Some of our siblings were still very young at the time, the youngest wasn't even a year old. We even found spies lurking around, probably trying to find out why you weren't dead yet, to bring the information back to your father. Ashen's expression was slowly sinking. Even Cecilia was in shock. She had no idea about any of this. Darson was only a year older than she was, and Cashin was the same age as Ashen. That meant her older brothers had been protecting the two of them for years without them even having the slightest idea. Our aunt reinforced the defenses at the border, and we sent some of our younger siblings to stay with our grandmother too, but we could never be at ease. We always had to keep an eye out. That night, when Father found out you and Cecilia had snuck out of the Onyx Castle, he became furious. Wait, you mean he wasn't furious because I was with Cecilia, but because you and our sister had put yourselves in danger, nodded Cashin. Father, Darson, and I had argued about it, but he was too angry and decided to tell you to leave. He knew you'd be strong enough to survive after your training, and just like me and Darson, you'd have no difficulty fighting those people off. But he couldn't endure Cecilia, mother, or one of our siblings being in danger any longer. He kicked you right out because it was simpler, added Darson, and he figured a certain someone would follow you too. His eyes went to Cecilia, who was slowly realizing the truth. The memory she had tried to bury deep inside all this time was re-emerging. The men who had captured her and Cease had said some things about a prince they had to kill. For the longest time, she hadn't thought much about it. At that time, she had no idea about Ashen's background, and she was part of the imperial family. She had thought they were talking about one of her brothers or her father. She had never thought. Wait, muttered Ashen, livid. His dark eyes kept going to Cecilia, to the large scar on her throat. He was also slowly starting to understand the truth about that night. Cashin and Darson exchanged a glance, the latter crossing his arms with angry expression. Yep, he grunted. Our little sister did exactly what we had feared she'd do. We found out too late that she wasn't in her room, muttered Cashin. We went after her as fast as we could, but... I take it that you heard the rest of it already. His eyes went to Cecilia, who was still in shock. The men who attacked me and Cease were, after Ashen, she muttered. Yeah, said Darson. Seems like they were fine using a girl and her dragon as the side prize. A long, heavy silence ensued. No one dared to say a word, all a bit shaken up or affected by their story. Cecilia and Ashen's hands had parted. She had tears of anger in her eyes. She had no idea how long those people had been targeting Ashen. How could they repeatedly send someone to kill a teenage boy? Meanwhile, Ashen was as still as a stone, his eyes on the floor, completely stunned. That's so sad, muttered Nana, breaking the silence, tears in her eyes. Well, there's nothing to be done about it anymore, said Tessandra. You guys should really get going now. I'm sorry about what happened to you two, but right now, my man is still waiting in the middle of the city to be killed or saved. So, let's get going and see what the Cheshi have to offer, or we'll have a lot more tragic love stories. They closed the door of Bastat's safe house behind them, dark expressions in their eyes. While Neptune walked ahead, a bit excited to see the Cheshi, Cecilia was much slower behind her, still dismayed by the revelations Cashin had just divulged. They had parted without a word, and Ashen had remained mute, in complete shock, not even giving her a glance. Don't worry, suddenly said her older brother's voice. She lifted her eyes to see Darson smiling at her. He put his big fur cloak on her shoulders, and his large hands after that, patting her gently. Cashin isn't as mad as he makes it look, and your Ashen's not that much, he continued. He just needs a bit of toughening up. Do you remember? They used to be super close too. Just leave it to Cashin, all right? He'll get Ashen back on track. Don't worry, little sis. We're here for you. Darson's warm and comforting words finally made her smile. Cecilia nodded and walked into his embrace, happy to have her older brother there. Because Darson was so big, she felt like he could wrap all of her in his arms, and it was the most comforting space. She heard him chuckle. I missed you too. Hey, next time, take me along, alright? I know Dad and Cashin aren't all that fun, but you should have at least told me. Escaping to see a boy. Ugh, I don't want to think about you getting a boyfriend. You're too young. If I'm too young, you're also too young to date Nana. Hey, I'm 11 months older than you. That's still. Oh, Sir Dragon! Neptune exclaimed, who hadn't heard any of that. Good morning. Oh, sorry, I don't have any beignet for you today. Oh, and Sir Shiny Dragon. Good morning to you too. Both Cray and Kian had appeared at the same time, their heads appearing at the end street with their eyes shining in excitement. When those two were next to each other, it was easier to see their differences. Kian's body was indeed longer, more snake-like, while Cray was bigger, like a bull. Kian's wings were also thinner and longer, almost like fins, while Cray's were larger and seemed stronger. You should see my dragon, Darson said. Dran's even bigger than these two. Oh, really? He couldn't come with you? Asked Neptune, a bit disappointed. Her question made Darson grimace, visibly embarrassed. Not really. We both made a bit of a mess back home, so we were grounded. Dran's with my dad, he tends to be a pain when he's let loose, so. He's too much like you, said Cecilia, walking up to the dragons to pet them. Hey, I'm a free spirit. It can't be helped that things are so weak next to me. You see these muscles, Nana? I train 6 hours a day to get this strong. You like strong men, right? Neptune nodded, a bit shy, but Darson kept showing off his biceps proudly, and she was happily being the audience. Cecilia chuckled. He broke columns of the Imperial Palace when we were young, she told Neptune. Our aunt even banished Dran twice because he made a mess during the festival too. What, really? Ceci, groaned Darson. You're supposed to help me. They joked for a while, but Neptune was more impressed by Darson's antics than scared. They played around with the dragons for a while too, both of them attracted to Cecilia's pets and the delicious smells on Neptune. The rain was now a calm drizzle that ran down their scales, but neither seemed bothered by it. Good morning. They turned around, spotting Aglythia standing there with a faint smile. She was wearing the same outfit as yesterday, and was busy eating one of the familiar beignets. Ah! Nana exclaimed. I can't help but get one when I can, said Aglythia, amicable. They truly are delicious. Neptune blushed a bit, proud of her family's food's reputation. Meanwhile, Cecilia was surprised by how calm and easygoing that woman was. Next to her, Darson crossed his arms, visibly doubtful as well. The dragons also reacted to this woman's presence. While Kian growled a bit, like a fair warning to a stranger, Cray tilted its large head and approached slowly. Aglythia stared right back at the dragon, completely calm and fearless despite the large size of the beast. It was as if she was perfectly familiar with dragons already. The siblings exchanged a look, and Nana was in awe too. People rarely felt anything other than fear when first meeting a dragon, especially an adult one. The enormous difference in size and the large claws and fangs usually kept even the most curious ones at a safe distance. Aglythia, however, seemed completely fascinated by the dragon and not the slightest bit intimidated. "They are two beautiful ones," she said calmly. "How do you?" "I am not afraid," she said. "Moreover, dragons sense fear, don't they? It excites them." Darcy and Cecilia exchanged another intrigued look. That woman did know a thing or two. Soon enough, though, she turned away from the dragons to smile at them. "Are we ready to go?" "Are the others not coming, then?" "They need to rest," said Cecilia. Another reason she had refused for Ashen to come was that she didn't trust the Cheshi just yet. Their arrival had been way too timely, as if they had really waited for something to happen before intervening. Even if Aglathea seemed to have nothing but pacific intentions, she had still placed the triplets by her side from the beginning and had been watching them. Plus, Cecilia had to be doubtful of a woman who didn't fear dragons. The previous one had turned out to be quite a handful. "All right then, let's get going." She turned around, and began walking back toward the outer wall. The three of them followed behind, both intrigued and cautious. The dragons followed them for a little while too. The streets were empty at such an early hour, partly because of the poor weather of the past few days. Only a few intrigued eyes that were in the streets at that time curiously followed the strange quartet and the two dragons behind them. Aglathea seemed familiar with the streets. Twice, she suddenly turned into small alleys that people foreign to the place would have missed. The dragons had to take extra detours and jumps to keep up, Cray even trying to get on the roofs until Cecilia called it down. "Sorry," said Aglathea. "I don't think they will be able to follow us much farther." To their surprise, she had taken them to a small building that looked like one of the little shops in the outer market. It seemed to have been closed for a while, but Aglathea went in anyway, clearly very familiar with the place. She asked all three of them to come in, and for Darcy to close the door behind them. The space was actually so small that he had to lower his head a couple of times to not hit some pots hanging from the ceiling. Cecilia looked around. It seemed like this place was a simple pottery shop during the day. Aglathea walked behind the counter and into a small room in the back made for storage. She went directly to a very large chest, taking the things on top of it out of the way, and opening it up with a groan. Cecilia was fascinated. Everything else in the shop had a very thin layer of dust on it, except for this large trunk. Aglathea took some random things out of the safe, like wax candles and pots of paints, then what seemed like a wooden mat, and suddenly stepped inside. "I hope none of you has an issue with confined spaces," she said. Darcy grimaced, but none of them said anything. She grabbed one of the candles, quickly lighting it up with a little stone. Then, Aglathea's body gradually disappeared downwards. Intrigued, Nana and Cecilia went to the chest, discovering it actually had no bottom. It was probably previously covered by the wooden mat, but there was now a large hole with stairs and Aglathea's figure leading down. "Come on! Don't worry, someone will put everything back once we're gone." Cecilia frowned, but stepped in, helping Neptune behind her. They each took a candle too. "They don't have tall people, these Cheshi," groaned Darcy behind them, who had to twist his shoulders a bit to get in. Luckily for him, the space got larger as they went down. Cecilia was still in awe. They were clearly in a tunnel. Not only that, but a well-maintained one. The steps were made of stone and quite old, but they were only moving ridiculous amounts of dust. There were no traces of spiders or any bugs in there. The passage was also dug large enough to let someone of Darson's width go through easily. There were even little mirrors strangely carved into the walls, and Cecilia quickly understood they were meant to help spread the light from their candles inside the tunnels. For a while, none of them said a word. Cecilia could feel Nana walking very close to her, probably a bit worried, and from time to time, they heard Darson grumble and complain about the uneven ceiling above them. She was even more intrigued by the fact that they kept going down. Suddenly, the steps stopped, and they found themselves in a flat tunnel, going two ways, left or right. "The right one takes us to the castle," said Aglithia, "but I don't recommend we go there today, it would be risky to be found on the other end. The Yekara have seized control of the castle." "Is this how the triplets had followed us too?" "Yes," nodded Aglithia. "They had orders that at least one of them should remain with you at all times. Not that you needed protection, but we thought it would be better to keep an eye on you, that's how we learned what had happened. They warned us as soon as they realized the royal guards were preparing for a fight." That explained how Aglithia had appeared so soon at Bastat's safe house. "These tunnels," muttered Nana. "How are they possible? If I'm right now, we're under Saura's bed." "That's right," nodded Aglithia. "See, the Saura wasn't always such a big river, nor this high. Centuries ago, this tunnel was one of many bridges on the ground level, but as the river began to get higher and higher, it had to be reinforced. So now, it is a tunnel all but the Cheshi clan have forgotten about. So, we made sure to keep it safe, and use it for our clan's needs. Not too often, of course." "So you guys really are spies," said Darson. "I thought so. Your steps barely make any noise, and you're skinny but not weak." "I knew it. We have several specialties," Aglithia answered with a smile. "Collecting information is one of them. It might even be our greatest strength." "If you know so much," said Cecilia, "I wonder why you never got involved before such terrible things happened." "Things are sometimes more complex than they seem," she sighed, "even in just one clan. But you'll understand a lot more soon. We're almost there." Indeed, stairs had appeared ahead leading upward. Cecilia had also tried to do a bit of math in her head, and she was sure they had walked farther than the bridge's length, far above their heads. This tunnel was impressive, considering how long it was and the pressure of the water that came from above. How many more did the Cheshi have, hidden like this? They probably had dozens of secret locations scattered in the capital as well. "Watch your heads." Aglithia began to climb up without warning. To their surprise, the way up was much shorter than when they had climbed down. Natural light finally spilled in, but this time, they stepped inside what looked like a cave. They came through a normal door, although it was simply hidden by a heavy tapestry. Coming out seconds after Aglithia, Cecilia took note of the many shelves of stored food around them. There were hundreds of pots filled with grains, herbs, dried meat, and even some oils, from the smell. "This is the winter food storage room of our main residence," smiled Aglithia. "I was expecting a better concealment for this door," Darson raised an eyebrow. "Oh, don't worry. We have security measures just in case this secret tunnel is found. We can have it collapse in just seconds if it's ever compromised." Nana and Darson both shuddered. To think the long tunnel they had just come out of could have crumbled over them was terrifying. "Come on. I'll take you to our clan leader. He's expecting you." "To be honest, we all are. It's our first time meeting dragon masters in centuries." "Did you know about Giselle's dragon?" "No. We had suspicions, but she kept it hidden well until yesterday. We had only found traces of that dragon up until now." She didn't sound like she was lying. Aglythia took them out of the storage room, and to Cecilia's surprise, they stepped into a courtyard very much like the ones in the Dragon Empire's Imperial Palace. The architecture was strikingly similar, although it was on a smaller scale. Darson seemed to have noticed too, his dark eyes looking all around in surprise. "This place feels like home," chuckled Aglythia. "I figured it would. You'll understand in a moment." She made them walk past several rooms that looked like two studies, a library, another storage room, and a residential area. Finally, she knocked on a door, and stepped in right away. They walked into a large, round room. It was an office, still mostly lit by several candles, with two people standing at the large desk and a big window behind them. On their left was an enormous bookcase, filled with dozens of old books, parchments, and all sorts of papers that were rolled or piled up. There was even a table in front of them with a tray holding a large teapot, and a couple of roughly drafted maps. What caught their eyes first, though, was the large fireplace with a strange work of art above it. It was held on little metallic pins and incomplete, but both Cecilia and Darson immediately recognized the skeleton of a baby dragon. "Oh, finally!" The people behind the desk raised their eyes from the document they were looking at. They were obviously related, their facial features so similar they could even have passed for siblings. The woman was obviously much older, though. She had gorgeous white hair arranged in two buns and the rest of it falling down to her waist. The man had his hair cut much shorter, with the side of it shaved clean. Both of them were covered in those unique dots and line tattoos like Aglythia, and wore similar leather clothes. The woman wore a lot of jewelry, though, mostly stones, and around her neck, a thin silver chain with a unique dragon tooth as a pendant. "Morning greetings," said Aglythia, stepping aside. "Princess Cecilia, Lady Neptune, and Darson. Prince Darson, let me introduce you to my father, Lord Marat, our clan leader, and my dear grandmother, Elder Olia." "It is an honor to meet you," said the old lady, immediately stepping forward. To their surprise, this elder bowed to them, her striking blue eyes glistening with tears. Behind her, her son did the same, although he didn't look as moved and was more closed off. His bow was shorter, and when he stood back up, his eyes seemed cold. "Welcome to the Cheshi clan," he said. "I am sorry we did not get to meet earlier, Princess." Cecilia nodded, a bit perplexed. She hadn't seen people react like this to her in a long while. She was also confused by this whole room and the atmosphere. Aglythia stepped forward, facing her father's cold stare. Either she was used to it, or she didn't care at all. "Father, did you think about my request this morning?" The Cheshi clan leader's eyes shifted from his daughter to Cecilia and Darson. She realized he seemed young to have a daughter Aglythia's age, who was probably as young as herself, and she was his third daughter. He didn't have blue eyes like his mother, but everything else screamed they were family, and Aglythia too. He was the one with the most visible tattoos, so much it covered more than half of his skin. After a while, he faintly nodded. "You may take them there, Mother. I will lead the way," nodded the old lady, stepping forward. She grabbed a long white cane that was leaning against the wall, and smiled at Cecilia. "Let's head out, Princess," she said. "We have a lot to show you and not much time." She left the room, and after a hesitation, they all followed after her. Once the door was closed, Cecilia couldn't help but glance back. She had expected better for an interaction with the clan leader, especially if she was to convince him to side with them against the Yekara. "Don't worry about my father," said Aglythia, who had noticed. "He's not as stern as he looks." "He doesn't like the Yekara clan," added her grandmother with a chuckle. "This whole situation is a little bit bothersome." So they weren't completely closed off to the issues of the world outside their walls, then. Cecilia felt a bit better hearing this. Yet, the Cheshi clan elder didn't seem in a rush. The old lady calmly walked down the corridors, guiding them with a little smile on her lips. Cecilia was about to ask where they were headed to when she suddenly stopped in front of large double doors. To their surprise, both Aglythia and her grandmother clapped their hands, bowed their heads, and stayed silent for a few seconds before they finally pushed the doors. They opened into a large room, but with an open roof. In front of them, on the ground was a sizable carpet with dozens of little cushions on it, as if this was a place to sit. Beyond that, against the wall, little plates of fresh food were placed, mostly fish and meat, even eggs, perfectly prepared in pretty trays and ready to eat. None of them thought about sitting down or eating, though. On the wall opposite the doors was a very large mosaic that had grabbed all their attention. Cecilia was speechless. "Sorry about that," chuckled Elder Olia, pushing the cushions out of the way with her cane. "We just finished the morning lesson with the young ones." Cecilia barely heard what she had said. Next to her, even Nana had covered her mouth with her hands. The mosaic was superb and so detailed, the two creatures on it almost seemed real. They formed a circle, each of them taking up one half, one white, one black. The white one was a water dragon with blue sapphires for eyes, and the other one looked strangely like Cray, but with yellow gems as its eyes. "Now," chuckled the old lady, "what do you really know about dragons?" "Nothing," scoffed Darson. "They are just our dragons, that's it." "Those are such perfect representations of dragons," muttered Naptuni, completely captivated by the mosaic. "This one really looks like Sir Dragon." "An earth dragon," nodded Aglythia. "The sea dragon is made of nacre, the earth one of obsidian." "Dragons can be of any color, though, can't they?" Cecilia faintly nodded. "Mine's yellow," exclaimed Darson, winking at Nana. "He looks like a nice curry beignet." "How? What is this?" Cecilia finally asked, turning to Elder Olia. "I don't understand." The old lady smiled gently. "This is our prayer room to the ancient dragon gods." These two dragons here are not like the dragons of your family, princess. They represent the very first dragons that came to this continent, thousands of years ago. Dragons that were much, much more powerful, ancient and large. The first and only, the original dragon gods. It is a very old tale to most, but to our clan and family, it is a precious legend that shall never be forgotten. She stepped closer to the mosaic, staring at it fondly. This piece of art is merely a representation, a reminder of our family's devotion to the ancient dragon gods. Even as time goes by, we keep transmitting this epic legend that has become our family's pillar. We are the guardians of a history that shall never be engraved, written, or kept anywhere but in our minds. She turned to them, and slowly, with her granddaughter's help, sat down on the cushions. Neptune glanced toward the siblings but, noticing that neither of them had moved or intended to sit, she didn't try to either. Neither did Aglathea, who simply stood next to her grandmother. As I said, continued the old lady, this legend goes back many, many centuries, when there was only this vast piece of land and the sea surrounding it. The first two creatures to be born were a pair of dragons. One dragon was born from the earth's core, the other dragon came from the depths of the sea. They were a pair, but neither siblings, nor mates. Their bond went far beyond those human concepts. They were gods, paired for eternity. Cecilia's eyes went to the mosaic on the wall. The dragons were represented facing each other, in a circle. For someone who knew dragons, their position was one that two dragons would have taken when playing together. For a very long time, the two dragons were free and alone to roam the continent and play in the vast sea. One day, a group of men and women came to this continent, crossing the sea and reaching the shore. They had come from far, far away, to find a new land to call home. It was the first time the dragons met humans, and the opposite was also true. They couldn't understand each other, but they soon realized the other was intelligent and kind. For the first time, men and dragons became friends and allies. They observed each other, discovering the secrets of a new kind and learning from one another. The one thing that dragons were bewildered by the most was the humans' ability to mate and procreate. The two dragons had been alone together for centuries. They had never imagined having a progeny. One had been born from the earth, the other from the sea. Yet, humans were not only reproducing, but as time went on, the dragons saw generations and generations of them being born. They became fascinated with the humans, and began to wish to have their own offspring, as well. However, as powerful as they were, the dragon gods had been born with no ability to procreate themselves. So, they set off to find a solution, roaming the continent and seas in hopes of finding an answer. Sadly, they found none. Instead, they witnessed all the other kinds of creatures in the world giving birth to their own offspring, and became more and more desperate to have their own. "That is so sad for them," muttered Nana, completely absorbed by the story. "To see it for centuries but not be able to have their own." "Exactly," nodded Elder Olia. So, disheartened, the dragons went back to see their human friends, hoping that, together, they could find a solution. More time passed, during which the humans kept their future generations studying for the sake of their dragon friends. The dragons lived in harmony with the humans, both species helping each other. Meanwhile, more humans arrived on the land, different tribes that had come from other, farther lands. The dragons remained with the original tribe of humans that had been by their side for centuries, the only ones who had remained loyal to them. The other humans were greedier, they tried to befriend the dragons for their own sakes, for greed and power. Jealousy began to flourish between the humans that were allies with the dragons and the others. Soon, fights began. Yet, the humans begged the dragons to stay out of it. They believed the greed of men was man's problem, and the dragons should remain sacred, untamed, and untainted by such sin. Sadly, as time went on and more human tribes attacked, their numbers dwindled. The dragons saw their friends' families decimated, the children of those they had loved for centuries killed. And they did nothing, scoffed Darson. Dragons would be the first one to jump into the fight and grill A. He stopped talking after noticing Cecilia and Neptune glaring at him. He grimaced, and mumbled an apology, putting his hands behind his back. Of course, resumed the old lady. There came a time when the dragons couldn't take it anymore. The humans they loved had become so few, soon there would be none left. The dragons refused to stay away any longer, and met with the young couple that led the tribe of their beloved humans. Coincidentally, that young couple had yet to have any children. They had experienced the dragon's desire for children so much that they had become the closest to the dragon gods. So, together, they prayed that a new, stronger generation would be born that could protect them. They prayed for a very, very long time. The woman and the sea dragon went to the sea to pray for their daughters to be born with the heart of a dragon. The man and the earth dragon went to the mountain, to pray for their sons to be born with the strength of a dragon. What happened next, said Iglythia, is the most important part, yet the one we don't exactly understand. Our ancestors said that their prayers united, and the woman got pregnant by a miracle. The dragons were so relieved that they kept praying throughout her pregnancy. They swore to the sea and earth they had come from that they would give up their own immortality for the children to be born as strong as a dragon, with the heart of a dragon. Exactly, nodded her grandmother. Many moons later, the woman gave birth to a boy, first. A strong, healthy boy with a skin as dark and tough as a dragon's scale, eyes that could see far more than any human, and a stomach that could handle fire. Not only that, but that boy could communicate with the earth dragons so well that they were both thinking the same thing, always, at the exact same time. Cecilia and Darson exchanged a glance. Now that sounded very familiar to them. As the firstborn, the boy was set to become the new leader of the tribe and protect his family against the invaders. The earth dragon's soul was tied to this boy. They shared everything, their strength, their desires, and their pain too. Together, they set off to reconquer the land of the boy's ancestors. What about the sea dragon? Asked Neptune. The sea dragon kept praying all this time. Seeing what had become of its counterpart and the woman's son, the sea dragon and the mother prayed for another child to be born, one that would cherish life and be brave, but also kind. Soon, a beautiful daughter was born. She had the skin as white as the sea dragon, and could swim like a fish. Her voice was said to be able to stop wars, and make men and the sky cry together as one. Just like her brother, her soul was united to the sea dragon's soul. That pair of siblings became the very first dragon masters. Like our family, muttered Cecilia. No, Not like your family, said Aglithia. This is your family. Your ancestors, long ago in history, were the dragon owners. That's right, princess, nodded Elder Olia. Your father is a descendant of the earth dragon's master, and your mother, a descendant of the sea dragon's mistress. No, wait. It doesn't make sense, said Darson. I get it for Dad, but Mom ain't got a dragon. None of her people did. That's also explained in the legend, answered Aglithia, or more like, there's a reason for it. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.